Yep.
Welcome to That Japanese Thing. This week we're talking about Zatoichi. My name's Chris. This is our Japanese podcast about all things Japanese, anime, movies, Japanese culture. With me today is Dylan Yesh. Welcome, guys.
Hi there.
Hello.
How you guys doing? As if I didn't
Pretty-
already know the answer.
Okay, a little bit tempestuous.
So yeah, Yesh has been
Tempestuous.
sprung a surprise trip.
A unexpected trip, yes.
Intercontinental surprise trips are always the best, aren't they?
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's been a busy few days for me as well, and yeah, let's talk about some ninja stories, not ninja stories really, Yakuza samurai stories. I don't know.
Yakuza Samurai Masseuse stories.
There's a lot of massaging going on in this movie. Dylan, what is this movie? Tell us. You brought it to our attention.
Yeah. So I just wanted to round out our old school samurai flick backgrounds with some movies other than Akira Kurosawa films.
Right.
And The Tale of Zatoichi is the first Zatoichi movie. It was made in, well, I don't want to know. I believe it was made in
1962.
That's it, 1962. And they made a total of 26 films between 62 and 89. And then they made several other content from television series. I believe there was a movie.
Four
quite
television
late in
series. There was some reboots as late as 2010.
Yeah.
One thing I found interesting is all of the like they really churned out those movies, right? So there wasn't even a year gap between the first and the second one. They both happened in 1962. And then the next year there were 3 of them. Next year there were 4 of them. And then 3, 2, 2, and then it slowly started going to 1 a year. So
Zatoichi, assemble!
These were being, I mean, God, they must
Mass
have,
produced.
people must have been writing the scripts, minutes before they were filmed.
Now, I won't claim to have watched every Zatoichi film, but I've watched quite a few. And the ones, and of those, the storyline doesn't really differ very much. It's like, I very much get the feeling that what they're serving is comfort food. You know what you're going to get. It's entertaining at the time. There's nothing not really novel about it. I know this is going to pick up hate. That's fine. Bring it.
So,
But it is pretty much what you get, which is blind samurai masseuse goodness.
I mean, this is, excuse me, this is one of those things that doesn't really happen anymore, except maybe in like sci-fi magazine or something. This was a serialized essay, is what they called it. Although I think it's probably a mistranslation because the word for novel and essay are kind of similar in Japanese. So used to get like weekly releases of chapters of stories in magazines, and you'd buy your favorite magazine of the genre you liked, be that historical or science fiction or whatnot. And I guess this would have been drama. What do they call it? Period drama, I guess. Jijageki in Japanese. And yeah, so that's how this was originally released, as a little chapter by chapter kind of story. And then it got taken up into a movie, which we've just watched, which was Zatoichi Monogatari, and then just churned through because obviously it did quite well. It is the most sequelized samurai movie of all time, which is quite an achievement, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it is.
And I find it's a bit strange to kind of classify this movie that we watched as really a samurai film. given that there is no actual samurai in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's
so-
one
yeah.
Ronin,
Correct.
but he now works for the Yakuza.
Yes.
So I'm not sure at which point you stop being a samurai when you switch to the bandit team.
Or whether the term samurai movie has like these fine designations. I think anything with a katana in it would technically, for a lot of people, define it as a samurai movie. To be quite fun.
Probably you go on like Tuchan and you'd find a lot of Japanese specific terminology that refers to these sort of things.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
yeah.
in spirit, it is right. It's very much got like flavors from Yojimbo and Sanjuro and other samurai films of preceding eras.
we're joking that Sanjiro is just somewhere in the background here manipulating everyone.
Yeah,
You just don't see him on screen.
it would totally make sense.
To switch to something completely different. Yes, describe the plot of this.
All right. So, approximately speaking, a blind man walks into town and finds a gambling den immediately. Upon convincing the people within that he is a frail, older, blind man that's perhaps a little bit dumb, he immediately scams everyone. This is more or less the plot of the rest of the film, too. As our blind man turns out to be a quite skilled swordsman that had demonstrated his skill to the boss of this place's Yakuza population before, and gets invited in partially on the pretense that he'll work with them or something, but like it's very background, I scratch your back, you scratch my back, without being too well defined initially. Zatoichi, our blind masseuse, just partakes immediately, and he dives into hedonism quite firmly. Where we get introduced to the rest of our cast, whose names I don't particularly remember, but I do know we get introduced to a man who is the epitome of cowardice. He has gotten a woman pregnant, we find this out fairly quickly, and he's attempting to run away from that. He attempted to go beat up a blind man after Zatoichi conned them and walked away. He was one of the people going to go jump Zatoichi. Please note, one of. They decided to multiple chase him down. And then the plot begins to develop that two gangs or two Yakuza groups are clashing in this area. We are following the larger of the groups, but the smaller of the groups has recently obtained a samurai, or at least has gained the service of a samurai, who maybe embarrassed himself and has come here to serve. It is suggested quite firmly that half of the Yakuza group would fall to his blade if left alone. Quite easily, even. The tension in the movie is largely as the two groups begin rising actions against each other, lifting the tension, and getting us to the point where something has to break. Meanwhile, Zatoichi meets the samurai while fishing, and they begin a totally innocent bromance of sorts. The fishing is perhaps the most relaxing thing I've seen in the Japanese cinema so far from the movies we've watched. And the discussions on philosophy and such really tells you that they develop a very firm and very real friendship with each other.
Okay, so let's not spoil anything right away.
Further than that, fair enough.
And
Stuff happens.
yeah, so let's just give a brief little rating, I guess.
Or idea of what we felt about the movie.
Let's start with Dylan, I guess.
I mean, I'm biased because I brought this up. I like Zatoichi. I've watched quite a few of them. I'm a fan of the actor Shintaro Katsu. He's quite cool.
Okay.
I think he fulfills the role really, really well. And there's sort of this. I mean, it's a good mystique. You know, you've got a blind swordsman whose other senses have heightened, and he's so skilled with the sword that he's essentially capable of taking on, people who've got full use of their sight. Um, it's quite comedic, and it's informed several other movies and other forms of media. So I'd say I'm a fan. I don't think it brings anything new to the table, really, other than maybe the novelty of the fact that the protagonist is blind. Other than that, it's pretty common sort of fantasy samurai fare, if you would word it that way.
Has there... Oh, I'll get to that later. Okay, so, I don't know. It's not the best samurai thing we've watched. It's not... It wasn't bad or anything, though. Let's think. The action was like a slow burn kind of action, and then there was like a giant, kind of town battle.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of makes you... It gives you a bit of time to get to know the characters for a while, which is nice. It's not just an immediate kind of action flick. There's a few things to think about, but I don't think it's a particularly deep story. And like the philosophical aspects of a blind swordsman or that sort of thing doesn't really come through as particularly meaningful.
Oh yeah, no, it doesn't do that at all.
So I think it's maybe a 6 out of 10 for me. Very easy to watch though. If you're looking for an introduction to samurai stuff, it's probably quite a good one because it covers a lot of the tropes without immediately being recognizable as like the most samurai of samurai stories. What do you think, Yesh?
This was a 7.5 out of 10 for me. I don't normally give the half, but I'm gonna add it here. I'm a sucker for character-driven drama, and Zatoichi, while, like you said, it runs a bit slower, it takes a lot of time for the action to get there, it does that in establishing the characters and establishing the conflict. And the one thing I can't stand is when two people meet and I guess they're in love. Great romance time. Or two people meet, we're the best of brothers, I guess I'm going to sacrifice my life for you now. I guess that's just a thing that's happening. And this movie, a lot of the relationships are a lot more believable. Right down to the bad guys, the leaders for the two factions really feel like they hate each other for a good reason. It's not just, I guess we exist because we're the bad guys. There's some real negativity on both sides, and the rising action happens on screen. If I wanted to say something negative about the first Sanjuro movie, which I don't really want to, it was very good, that we watched at least, I should say. It's that the action happened off screen, the rising action, the conflict, basically, largely happened off screen. We begin in the middle of the conflict about to start. This one really shows us the tensions rising, the characters developing their relationships, and then we get our release in a giant action scene, which perhaps was not very well done. The action is less well done than some of the other fight scenes we have seen, but there's a lot of emotion in this movie that I'm just very positive about. So 7.5 out of 10 for me, I liked it. And I can understand how this would launch a series of movies based on cult of personality of Zatoichi.
Oh, okay. I guess there's some novelty to it that must have drawn people in.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't understand how you make like 27 films. Again,
they answered so few of the details.
If you could do it about comic books, you can certainly do it about samurai. So, I'm so surprised there's no like anime of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so strange that it's not just a thing that already exists in some form. I'm sure it gets referenced in anime quite a bit.
I was going to say The fable of the blind samurai that's got a sharper blade than those that can see is like almost what's that thing? Not a meme?
Trope.
Trope.
Yeah.
Yes, you're
But
right.
there's no like dedicated Zatoichi anime, and there probably should be. Like, probably someone should take the time to write a series, at least like a 12-episode series about it. It'd probably be quite good.
Do you think it would do well nowadays? I feel like it would have done really well in the early 2000s.
Or
not sure if
even like 60s, 70s.
I'm not so sure it would have been. I'm not so sure it would do super well now as an anime, but I might be wrong.
Well, the cult of personality era, which had Poirot, it had what's the thief
Yeah.
one we watched?
Lupin.
Lupin.
Uh, all of those cult of person, James Bond, all of
Yeah.
those, they died out in the 90s to 2000.
I'm not saying you have to make a faithful adaptation of it, modernize it, make it in the tastes of the modern audience. It would still be something. I'm just surprised that hasn't been done like every decade.
So
What's
Couldn't gets run over by a truck, right? And then
gets blinded? Yeah.
Reawakens in the Edo period as a blind
Oh no.
swordsman. No, that would be 2010s to 2020s. Not really.
So his
Not
cheat
really
skill,
contemporary.
his cheat skill is that he can actually see, but only using magical particles.
Yeah. Yep, that's probably about right.
And for some reason, he's unaware that only the cutest girls are crushing on him because he can't see their faces. So
And he's surrounded by them.
yeah, but he has no idea.
Yeah.
That would be the new one. But this has been done. I don't know if you noticed. Star Wars did this twice recently. So they did the
Yes.
exactly
I remember.
Zatoichi in Rogue One, and
Yes, I
then they did a
remember.
better version in Rebels, which was Ken and Jarrus.
Yeah, I remember in Rebels. Yeah, that's right.
So obviously, somewhat. I mean, and Star Wars has always been kind of linked to samurai stuff, so it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will say the I am one with the Force and the Force is with me was like a thing that people picked up. If there's one problem, there's lots of things, but if there's one thing I think about Star Wars that should be its key feature, it's that people quote it long after the movie is finished airing. It stays with people.
Yeah, that's true.
And I am one with the Force and the Force is with me is one of those lines that just became part of cult media for a while. So I think that as an adaptation, it did its job pretty well.
Certainly, they did like a faithful kind of referencing to that kind of character. Even it had like monk-like, aspects to him.
And also a certain silliness.
Was also
Like
a criminal.
A wise silliness.
Yeah.
Where he's doing bad things, but he's also laughing.
I think Donnie Yen even kind of looks a little bit similar.
By the way, can we just talk about the actor that played Zatoichi in this? Because all three of us, I think, were like
Yeah,
not sure.
not
what
entirely sure if he was Japanese, right?
He had a very Cantonese to like more perhaps even European look to him.
I think maybe it's just the fact that he was like completely, kind of shaven and had his eyes closed, sort of thing.
Compared to the other people in the movie, yeah.
I mean, if you look at his Wikipedia page, he looks normally Japanese in there.
Oh, okay. I suspect, yeah. Then perhaps it was just the makeup because
And
everyone
just
else was.
One
done
thing
completely
to talk
different.
about in this movie is that there were a lot of weird angles, right?
Indeed.
Like the director really hated the idea of just shooting something straight on. For the
Lots
most
of
part.
very high up cameras pointing downward. Tons
So-
of that.
Maybe faces were just a bit distorted quite often. So that's I think maybe what was going on. I kind of wondered at some point, especially in the town scenes, because there were some very strange angles and very weird framing. That it sort of suggests to me like if they hadn't done it in that way, it would have been very obvious this was just a modern kind of temple or something that they were trying to film.
There was one scene where the doors to the town opened, and you were like, "Hey, look, it's the Wild West."
Yeah, it very much looked like they just dressed a Western set in some vaguely Japanese kind of props, in that one scene.
So I'm supporting the statement you made that maybe by putting us in weird angles, it would knock your brain out of identifying those things as
Yeah.
easily.
But yeah, I mean, he's very Japanese, according to his Wikipedia page.
Mm.
What did you think about the little bromance thing that went on there? Because there was like this strange non-love story. What was her name? Okane? Otane.
Hirate.
Otane.
Yeah.
So Hirate was the samurai, Miki Hirate.
Yeah, sorry.
And Otane was the Yakuza girl. And there was this strange kind of scene in a swamp under the moonlight, all the Japanese tropes, Oh, doesn't the moon look beautiful kind of thing.
Mm. And he called her beautiful like 4 times.
Yeah.
So it felt like that was supposed to be a sort of romantic scene.
And then
But
he
I also
sort of
feel
just
like-
decided he wasn't into girls after that, it seems.
Well, it also felt like there was a level of self-disgust. Because when she responded positively, his face switched immediately to disgust. And you could say that it was with her, or you could say it was with himself. Sorry, Dylan, yes?
No. I was interrupting. I wanted to let you finish. Yeah. Okay. So I read that more as he doesn't want to get tied down, and he kind of sees that romance coming, down, above the horizon, and
Right.
so he decides to jank left immediately. But I will say that I say that because I've got the benefit of other movies. So in the scenes with Otane, he constantly says what a pity it is he doesn't have eyes and he can't see what she looks like. And they kind of allude to it being a possibility that he'd be, she'd let him touch her face so that he did know. But he never goes for it, he kind of like distracts and diverts the conversation here and there, and gets around it. In other movies, he has love interests, and that's a huge theme, is that that love interest takes his hand continually and puts it on her face, which I don't think would be, like a very comfortable thing in Japanese sort of
Culture.
interactions.
Yeah. It's probably just the director thinking, we got to make 10 of these in the next 3 years, so let's...
You can't tie him down.
tie him down in the first movie.
Remember as well, and I'm not saying anything bold, but thinking of the era, if you think of all the James Bond films, there's like a flirtation, he gets involved, and then there's always like sort of a break.
Yeah, sure.
Especially between movies.
Strange in the sense that the James Bonds always have like the Bond girl, right, for the movie, and it's a little like romance, not a love story or anything, and then you're right, there's a detachment after that. But this is just very much keeping the girl at arm's length, and then skipping town before anything can happen.
Literally crossing a river so that he doesn't have to bump into her.
And just on the way out of town, he's crying about the man he had to kill, right? There's not much in the way of emotion towards her.
For me, the real Romeo and Juliet story was between him and Hirate,
the tuberculosis samurai.
Yeah, the chap suffering from consumption, as they say.
Yeah.
That's where all of the emotional loading ended up being placed, and I think they did that pretty well, actually. Even the end, when they've got to face off against one another, you would think that they would cheap out in that they would try and make it so that it's the samurai. It's what the samurai had said originally, that he wants a match with Zatoichi.
Yeah.
But like as he's dying, he confesses that he would prefer to die by his blade rather than anyone else's. And that's technically the real reason. And it is a sort of continual bait and switch, just like in Romeo and Juliet. They keep missing each other, and there's like, there keeps being a misunderstanding. And like as Zatoichi kind of pulls out of the conflict, the samurai starts to pull out of the conflict, but then someone sort of gives him some misinformation or misunderstanding that Zatoichi is sort of back involved, and then there's this constant tug and pull, and it almost feels like destiny's sort of kind of pushing them together to reach that tragic moment at the end.
He's also quite a genuine kind of person as opposed to Sanjiro, right? I mean, Sanjiro very much feels like he's playing the sides.
He's a total grifter.
He's taking
That's what
everyone's
makes him
money.
so
He doesn't really
lovable.
care about the consequences.
Yeah, he
This
cheats
guy-
at gambling.
This guy also cheats at gambling, sort of, right? And he's not okay with taking the boss's money to kill the samurai, even though he could have done it in a way that would have worked out for everyone. But it wouldn't have really sat well with him, I guess.
I think
So
I think he was
throws the
probably
money kind of back at whichever boss that was.
Yeah, I think he was probably the only character in the story that Zatoichi actually had any like
Respect.
close feeling towards,
Yeah.
really cared about, was the samurai. But yeah.
But yeah, he's not. I mean, it would have been practical, right? Sanjiro would have taken the 8
Oh yeah, no.
whatever.
Sanjiro
Cool.
would have times that by 3 at
Yeah, yeah.
least minimum.
Would have shed some fake tears over the death of the samurai and taken the girl with him on the way out, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very different attitude to the whole thing, and it's strange that it's coming from a place of like a gangster rather than an actual samurai.
Yeah, they kind of get into the sort of difficulties of accepting the thug life.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, I would recommend checking it out as a counterpoint to the standard Kurosawa stock films. Very different look. Maybe I think the dialogue in this is maybe a little bit better overall. Although I do prefer Sanjiro's kind of dialogue in general. But all those side characters feel a bit more real in this than they do in Sanjiro's movies. Or Kurosawa's movies, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want a popcorn katana fighting movie series that doesn't end, that you can watch every now and then, this is it. You can just consume it. It doesn't, you don't have to think about it all too hard. You just put it on.
You could watch one of these every week for almost a year.
Yeah. That is a thing
Yeah.
you could legitimately do.
And if you watch the TV series, you could watch something every weekday for almost a year as well. All right. Thanks everyone for listening. This has been The Japanese Thing. Ciao for now.
Bye.